All right. Good afternoon. We have had some technical difficulties recording our lesson tonight. So we are coming to you on a pre-recorded channel. Anytime you go live, you run the risk of this kind of thing. Maybe it's the weather. Who knows? But we could not get it to function correctly today. So we're just going to record it and allow you to watch it when you can later today. So welcome into our class. We're going to start today with some announcements. We've got some things we need to make you aware of. This coming Sunday, we have a new idea, a new form of service, I guess, that we can do. This Sunday, you'll be able to pick up a lunch. We haven't been able to do potlucks this year, obviously, and a lot of us missed that, just the time to be together and eat and sharing thoughts over a meal. And so we are going to have to-go plates for you this coming Sunday. Pick one of those up, and at least we'll be eating the same food. If we're not getting to eat it together, at least we'll be able to eat the same food. But along with that, we'll have extra plates, and we'd love for you guys to grab one of those and drop it off at the door of one of our shut-ins or one of our folks that have had to stay away from services because of sickness or illness, if they're a caregiver or things like that because of COVID. We want to connect in as many ways like that as possible. So Sunday, there will be a sign-up sheet for you to write down who you're going to deliver the food to. And just set on their doorstep, give them a call, talk to them, however that works out for you. But that'll be Sunday, and be looking forward to that. But we'll have one meal for everyone that's here, as well as all of our shut-ins. So I think Connie and the ladies that are preparing for 150. So there should be enough for everybody who wants one. In conjunction kind of with that, our in-person worship services are going to be postponed starting December 27th, the Sunday after Christmas. We're going back to our virtual worship service in an effort to quell the rising numbers in our county and in our community. We're going to go to a virtual worship service for until maybe January 17th is kind of what we're looking at now. So December 27th through January 17th will be our we'll be doing our virtual worship services. You can listen to those services in a variety of ways. You'll still be able to listen to them on Facebook, of course, on our Facebook page. If you don't have technology or know somebody that doesn't have technology, you can call from any phone, a landline, prepaid phone, a cell phone, any kind of phone. Call this number and it'll get you to our worship service. It's 304-278-0763, and that you can listen to like our last 8 worship services or classes. You can also listen on our podcast at Rome Church of Christ, on all your podcast apps, or on our YouTube channel. And so that's all the different ways you can do that. Since we're not going to be meeting in person, we may start doing kind of a prayer list here to kind of keep you updated in the middle of the week. So we thought, maybe we'd just start that this Wednesday and talk about some folks that are sick. Carol Galloway got to come home, so that's good news. Her pacemaker was replaced, and she's feeling better. We have several folks that we're connected to and members of our congregation that have COVID. David Roach, preacher at Winfield, some of you I'm sure remember he and Pam. He has COVID, although she does not, so that's good news for her. But be in prayer for David. Shelby Hagar is Dottie Hagar's granddaughter. She has COVID, as well as Sandy and Gary Smith all have COVID, so be in prayer for them. Larry Zimmerman has upcoming cancer treatments that he would appreciate prayers for. Theron Stover is Kim Stover's son and Maxine Romine's grandson. He's really struggling with heart and his kidney functions. They're decreasing right now, so the family's asked for our prayers there. Gail Hewitt is doing much better. She was, in fact, in the office yesterday, so it was good to see her. Um, there are others I am sure that I've overlooked that I'm not aware of, but maybe drop their names and what's going on in the comments of this video, and we'll get them on our prayer page. All right, we're going to start our class now. We'll hand the mic over to Rick, and we'll get the video ready.
Okay, we are, as Chris indicated, laboring under some technical difficulties, but we'll try to do this in a video recorded circumstance here and just make it available to you at your leisure. We are in the second of two lessons on morality and how morality influences how we behave. And the title of the lesson it's lesson 22, if you're following along, if you have the questions, study questions. And I noticed when I was going through this today that those study question numbers are really messed up. Let's hope that the rest of them aren't that way. Not that you can't follow them without the correct numbering. This is lesson 22, Morality's Proof of God. He has covered quite a bit of territory over the last 21 lessons and quite a variety of topics. And this one, these two here, last week and this week, are going to deal with how we decide as human beings what is right and what is wrong. And he will continue his examination of 6 different ways that modern man will rationalize and choose their modes of behavior and selecting what is right and wrong. And then he's going to compare that, obviously, to what the Bible says and what it has to offer as far as morality is concerned. So, lesson 22, John Clayton. Does God exist? Turn it back on. Yeah, that's it.
Welcome to the Does God Exist program, number 22. I would like to suggest to you that this is sort of a continuation of program number 21. If you haven't watched the first discussion of morality's proof of God, I would encourage you to do that before you watch this program, because we're going to continue that discussion. In program number 21, we took a look at some of the standards of the world around us. The question of how we make moral decisions. I want to emphasize that this discussion is part of our concern about the question of which God. Why Jesus Christ? Why the Bible? Why not Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or some other system? Why not a natural religion, a pantheistic religion? Why not atheism? One of the things we have tried to do is to talk about some of the historical evidence, some of the internal evidence, some of the things that are stated of great accuracy, scientifically and otherwise, in the Bible, which leads credulence to the biblical message. But what we have tried to do in this presentation is to talk about, okay, let's talk on practical terms. Does it lead us to anything useful? Does it help us in any way in life? And we looked at 2 Timothy 3, where the Bible tells us that the Word of God is profitable. It means it's useful. And useful for things like correction, instruction, conduct in righteousness, that the man or woman of God may be complete, perfect, totally furnished to all good works. The claim that is being made is that we can see God's wisdom in what he tells us about how to live. We've looked at the question of whether we can use the will of the people that we live with as a basis of making moral decisions. We looked at result-based explanations of morality and the use of ourselves as a standard. I have suggested to you that in reality, evolutionarily oriented philosophies suggest that it is survival of the fittest, or from a sociobiological standpoint, my role is to promote my genes in the population in which I live. That's results. But there are logical inconsistencies in that position. It's not a workable, practical philosophy. And unfortunately, many of our sex education programs have been rooted in avoiding pregnancy, avoiding babies, and that's it. Result-based. We tried to point out the inadequacy of such a standard. And then we looked at the question of whether things have changed. I tried to tell you the story about my seatmate on the airplane that said, look, we don't live in the same age in which Jesus lived. That old philosophy of religious nature might have worked in Jesus' day, but we live in a new age. We have new technology. We don't have to worry about diseases. We don't have to worry about unwanted pregnancies. And again, I would suggest to you that if you just look at the demographics, you can see the difficulties in such a proposal. Have we been able to solve the question of unwanted pregnancies? Have we wiped out sexually transmitted disease? The very nature of these diseases suggests we'll never wipe them out, that they can mutate and change. Those of us that have worked with situations where sexually transmitted diseases are an issue, whether it's in the United States or in places like Uganda, have come very, very quickly to the conclusion that until you change the lifestyles of people, you're not going to stop the disease. But there's a couple of other standards I'd like to call to your attention, and many of these have to do with religious standards. For example, we have the situation where people, and we might not admit this, but where people will say, well, how much I do something makes it right or makes it wrong. And how many times have we said to ourselves, and we've all been guilty of this, I mean, nobody's throwing rocks at anybody here, but how many times have we done something where we said, yeah, just do it once. I'll just eat that piece of candy, just one. Or more seriously, I don't get drunk very often, but just this one time. The idea that frequency makes something right or makes it wrong. If you are not as bad as somebody else, that makes you good. I have had atheists say to me, well, I haven't done as many bad things as that preacher or that priest down there has. Okay, frequency. You're saying that the number of times you engage in a wrong activity makes your conduct and the basis upon which you make decisions in your life valid. But let's think about that. Just on a logical basis. How many times you got to shoot a man for him to be dead? How many times do you have to get involved in a sexual relationship to conceive a child? Or to contract a sexually transmitted disease? The moral philosophy of the Bible is that God calls us to commitment. Listen to Matthew 12 and verse 30. He that is not with me is against me. And he that gathers not with me scattereth abroad. Jesus says, your faith in me is not a Sunday morning thing. You're either with me or you're against me. You're either committed to what I have called you to do or you're opposed to me. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but it does mean that we're going to be faithful. Let me give you a clear distinction in this. I am faithful to my wife. That is within my ability. But I'm not perfect to my wife. I don't have the capacity to be perfect, but I do have the capacity to be faithful. And I think it's important to understand that that's what's applied here. We can be faithful to God. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be flawless. We're going to make mistakes. But the longer you're a Christian and the more committed you are to what the Bible teaches, the fewer number and the less severe those mistakes are going to be. And it's important to realize that commitment is maybe even a dirty word in our culture, but the fact of the matter is, it is the only way to success in so many areas of our life. And God calls us to be faithful. There's also the practical way in which we use what we have. There's a wonderful story in Luke 12. It's a parable. Some people call it the rich fool. There's this guy that had it made. He had the Midas touch. Everything he did worked. He made money hand over fist. But rather than use the money for what God had given it to him for, this guy says, I'm going to tear down my barns. I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm going to take a 10-year vacation. And God says, you're out of your mind. You're going to die. Now. So what good do the barns do you? The practical application being, we don't know what tomorrow brings. Life is an uncertain thing. And it's important for us to understand that frequency is a totally illogical position to take. And let me make what some of you will consider to be an incredibly naive and old-fashioned position. But I want you to think about the practical application of what I'm saying. The very first time that you get involved sexually with someone you're not married to, you have just lost something. You have just destroyed something that you can never get back. And you have robbed or you have cheated your future wife or husband of the most precious thing you could have ever given them. And that is the freedom from comparison. The knowledge that they are the only ones you ever cared enough about to completely and totally give yourself to. It's gone. Now, I have to say something very, very quickly here. Please do not misunderstand me. Because I know that I'm talking after the fact, probably to a majority of the people watching this video. And I'm not saying you're a bad person. And I'm not saying you can't have a good marriage. I'm not saying you can't have a sexually fulfilling marriage. I'm not saying you can't be a leader in the church, in your community. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying that God has called us to be faithful, one man, one wife for life, for a reason. Because that special relationship that you have with someone when they are the only ones you have completely and totally given yourself to is a beautiful, sacred, wonderful relationship. And it's important to realize that suggesting somehow that there's something archaic or that we have grown beyond that is to be incredibly ignorant of the real value and the real beauty and the real specialness of a sexual relationship. God has called us to recognize the importance of being faithful. And the sexual relationship we have is something that should be special. One man, one wife for life. If you have not gotten involved sexually with someone you're not married to, may I suggest to you that you don't. And if you've already done that, let me point out to you that the more you add a dictionary of comparison, the more unlikely it is that you will have what God wants you to have in your sexual relationship with the person you're married to. There have been some interesting studies on this. This is a study that came out of Houston. This was a Singles Again program. And these were people that had gotten involved with someone they were not married to, outside of marriage. And they asked these people, did you end up marrying the first person you slept with? 21% of the girls said, yeah, they did. That means 79% said they didn't. And 92% of the boys said they did not. Why does that happen? See, I believe we have turned sex into something that is totally rooted around physical release and have recognized none of the really close, inherent, personal things that God intended for sex to have. There's another part of this study. They also asked these kids, well, how did it turn out? 82% of the girls said it was a bad experience. 82%. And 61% of the boys, and boys lie about this stuff a lot, said it was not what they expected it to be. it was not a good experience. Sex is something God has given us that's beautiful when it is right, when it is appropriate. And this idea that having multiple partners brings great satisfaction or sexual fulfillment, or that somehow that should be the objective when we go out with someone, is an incredibly distorted view of what God would call us to on a moral basis. There's another standard that's sort of closely related to this, and it tends to affect all of us. There was a rap song some time ago that had a line in it that it was repeated over and over and over, and the line kept saying, if it feels good, do it. In the old days, let your conscience be your guide. And the idea is that how we feel about something makes it right or makes it wrong. I want to tell you another teacher story here. I taught in a school called James Whitcomb Riley High School. It was an inner city school in the center part of South Bend, Indiana. I loved my teaching. I enjoyed being with the kids. I enjoyed getting into their lives. But when you go to